Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast, This Week in America. Thank you for spending some time with us on this week's program. Let Us Give Thanks by Robert Perkins is a collection of poems that call attention to everyday experiences that we go through, sometimes without even thinking about them. Robert was born in Kentucky, moving to Springfield, Ohio when he was 4. He never thought of himself as a poet until a college writing experience. Since 1993, he has penned over 4,000 poems. Many are inspirational, including seasonal verse such as Christmas, Easter. A few stories he's written in verse as well. Let Us Give Thanks by our guest on today's program. Back with us is Robert Perkins. Robert, welcome back to the program. Great to have you with us once again.
Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure, and it is always fun to go back and look at the book and pull inspiration from that. And right now, I'd like to find some inspiration and thank you for spring, which we haven't had much of here in the Midwest this year, have we?
No. Well, it'll get there.
Just to read the poetry, we can remember what it's sort of like, and then we'll focus on getting into summer. Let's go back once again and sort of set the stage where this really began for you, when you decided, I really would like to write something that will have people focus on appreciation of being thankful. But you were in a store and seeing everything there, and you felt, but there's nothing here for Thanksgiving.
Well, it started with my wife. We were, it all started with advertisements, really.
Exactly.
It wasn't stores. It just skipped a whole Thanksgiving ad. They went from Halloween to Christmas, and there was no Thanksgiving ads anywhere. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, where's Thanksgiving in all this? We got to give thanks for what we have. And I said, I'm going to see what can we think of to give thanks for. So I sat down and made up a whole list. And I thought, let's see what I can do in the way of verse. And I think I came up with about 30 or 40 different poems at once. And then I put down my poetry for a while and didn't think of it for some time. And then someone suggested that I put it into a book. But to do that, I'd had to have about a whole lot more to put it into a book.
Exactly, yes.
So I had to put my mind to more poems to make it into a book. So that's what happened there.
It is an excellent book that you've compiled. It's called Let Us Give Thanks. Robert Perkins, our guest on the program. Book's available at Amazon, of course. You'll find information at bookventure.com in the bookstore there, and you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. When you read through and you see all of the different topics that you have there for giving thanks, I mentioned in the beginning, everyday experiences, you really look at things that are in our daily lives and find a way to express gratitude for them. Talk about the process in doing that, because it's things that we encounter in our daily lives that you're calling our attention to.
How about police?
Yes.
And the fire department. And for the kids, they got to have our heroes. We've got to have our heroes like the Batman and Robin, and the girls got to have their princesses and so on.
Yes.
Everybody's got to have somebody to look up to.
What's interesting, and you talk about seeing an ambulance go by, you see a fire truck go by, and we look and we get out of the way, that's pretty much the end of it, but we need to be thankful for what we see in those cases, because there are people, there are possibly lives being saved by the dedicated people, the paramedics, the medical people at the hospitals. So we're all better off because those are there. And you notice those. Once you started this whole process, what did this do to your observation of life? I have a feeling you look at things and you maybe look at it at a different perspective than the rest of us do.
I try to. It, well, like I said, it opens your eyes to things differently. And well, you can't help but see things in a different way once you start looking around.
Yeah, I would think once you start that process, suddenly you're looking at everything in a little different manner. And I tell you, once you read the poems and Let Us Give Thanks, You will do that too. You'll look at something you sort of take for granted today, and after you've read about it in the poem, it opens your mind, you're thinking about it, and you look at it in a whole new way. Let's talk about the process you go through. When you see something, when you see a fire truck that's going by, and you put it in perspective and why we should be thankful, how do you take that and then put that on the page? How difficult is that process? How challenging is it to verbalize what you're thinking?
Well, if you want to get real technical about it, it can be quite challenging.
I would think so.
I mean, if you want to break it down, you've got the firemen, you've got the equipment, you've got the truck itself.
Yeah.
Break it all down, but if you want to, and it's more than just that. I mean, if you want to get down to, it gets very technical.
I've got a whole page full of things, and I'm going to work these into poetry form. Okay, so let's do that. Once you've taken a particular area that you want to write about, and then putting it in poetry form, I would think that would be extremely. I'm not that talented in terms of. I have no talent in terms of writing poetry. I probably believe that's a gift. Putting that into poetry form, talk about, is that an easy process for you, or does it take some work to go back and put it together?
Sometimes it's easy to rhyme, but that's like when my friend way back 20 years ago challenged me to write a poem for the writing contest at college. I said, "Who? Me? I can't rhyme 2 words." She said, "Well, give it a try. You never know." Guess what? I came in third.
Which was the launch of a really exciting career that you've had in writing this.
About 10 or 15 years I wrote, and then I've kind of fizzled out. But I even tried writing my stories in rhyme, and that's not easy.
I was going to say that would be challenging, but I have no talent in that, and you have all the talent. I look at what you've done and the way you've structured these, and not only just the rhyme part, so you've got the technical thing that you have to get right, but then the message as well. You make it the rhyme, but I'm sure you go back and you look, but that's not really the message I want to get across. So you've got to really balance the two, I would think.
Yeah, you got to get the structure, you got to get the sentence in, you got to get the two parts of the sentence to rhyme and get your message across. It's not easy. And I think a lot of people don't take poets seriously because they think it's not a serious subject.
And once you start looking at it, and you read something like your book, Let Us Give Thanks, I think you end up with maybe more appreciation and gratitude for the person that's writing this, because it isn't just like taking a thought, putting it in a sentence, which most of us can do to some degree of competency, but to be able to turn this into a poem that captures your attention and then leaves you with a message when it's over. I'm going to ask this from 2 standpoints. When you write a poem, when you publish a book of your poetry, which you have done with Let Us Give Thanks, what does that do for you? And then what do you hope it does for the reader? What was this process like for you to be able to express yourself in poems and be able to do that and have a published book?
Well, for me, I was hoping to get like I said before, to open people's minds,
yes,
and to get them to see what is out there, what God has done for us, and what we need to open our minds and our hearts.
Exactly. And you've been able to do that in the book, and obviously for people reading it, you want them to have maybe a different perspective. As I'm looking through the book, Let Us Give Thanks, a lot of the things you give thanks for are physical things. We had talked about the fire truck, for example. We are talking about, it's not physical, but the 4 seasons where we know exactly what we're talking about. We're maybe 3 seasons, there are changes there. You do thanks for things like guardian angels. Talk about that. How did you come up with that idea? Because that's not something that you look at across the road and you see. How did that idea, for example, come across?
Well, I believe they're there. I believe that people say you're crossing the road, and all of a sudden you feel the need to stop, or you see there's a car coming and you didn't know it was there before, and you suddenly have to stop. And there's just, they're hard to explain, but
well, yeah, it's something you experienced, obviously, or see other people experiencing, so you're able to put that into words and let us give thanks for that. We're not quite sure why that happened, but we know we're better because it happened, possibly kept alive because that happened. One of the
I believe in them. I really do
well,
believe in them.
yeah, I think most people have had an experience. If not when they read this, they'll think, well, there was that time, as you mentioned, when suddenly I did something I didn't think I was going to do, and it prevented an accident or caused my life to go in a different direction. Laughter is something else that you give thanks for. Talk about the importance of that. That's something that we take for granted.
I've been told that relieves stress. I've been told that it's good for relieves heart problems. It's good for
yeah, it gets us through so many tough times.
It's hard to put words into it, but I've been told it's good for the heart, the bad stress. It does take care of bad health.
Yes, and it takes our mind off of bad things. If we can have a laugh, at least momentarily, it helps us put everything in perspective. What are you working on now? Are you still continuing with let us give thanks type poems, or are you working on something else?
No, I'm working on a love story.
Oh, no, that's interesting. Interesting.
It's my love story. It's between my dearly deceased wife and I. She died of multiple sclerosis about 2 years ago, and we met as an answer to prayer. I met her at the back of the church a couple weeks after I prayed for her. I prayed for a wife, and I said, Lord, I don't care who she is, I don't care what she looks like, just as long as she's a good Christian woman. And I went and sat down in my pew, and this little voice said, that's a dangerous thing to pray for. I said, I don't care. I said, just as long as she's a good Christian woman. And I went and sat down, and a couple of weeks later, I hadn't seen anybody in church, and I'd forgotten about my prayer. After church, I got up and turned around and looked, and there's this woman in a wheelchair in the back of the church. I'd never seen her at church before, and I thought, who's that? And that little voice said, go back and introduce yourself. I thought, what? Go on, introduce yourself. Well, I went back and introduced myself, and 10 months later, we got married.
That is a love story that I'm anxious to read about in your book, and you've got you give thanks to the guardian angel as well. Maybe there was that voice you were hearing was coming from the guardian angel, and it's interesting.
There was a lot of stuff that went on in between. So, and then about 20 years later, 21 years later, she passed away. But we went through a lot of things in between. She introduced me to a program for the Salvation Army called Hand in Hand, which was for people with all types of handicaps and disabilities. There were a couple of people there who were blind. Some had cerebral palsy. Some couldn't talk very well. Some were just had tumors taken out and they couldn't walk anymore. Nice people. One, he had to use the wheelchair, and this isn't a nice term, but when I first walked in and he started talking, I thought, oh man, he sounds like a nerd.
Yes.
He was one of the smartest guys there. He knew his music in and out, upside down, and he had in his home. He had his own little DJ station. And every Saturday night, he would broadcast on his DJ station, his little area.
Ah, interesting.
Up to 30 feet around the house. He had his own little 45 records, and his twin brother was the his engineer, and he did the records, and he had a little station, and he broadcast 30 feet around the house, and he was his. Oh my, was he bright!
Boy, it sounds like it.
He may have sounded strange, but he was a whiz when it came to music.
Well, it says so much about who you are and what you write about in the book, Let Us Give Thanks. And you touch on something there, another area you give thanks, and obviously a key part of your life is giving thanks for the home church. And that may be something that people overlook because it's sort of like more habit than anything else. And for you, obviously, home church is home base. That's your foundation. That's important to you.
Yes.
And that's where you met your wife after praying for it and having your guardian angel step in to make sure that you were going to follow through and close the deal on that.
I didn't know I was going to meet her at church.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing how that happens.
There she was.
Amazing how that happens. So many of the topics, beautiful music, a pleasant day, a good job, laughter we talked about, children.
And more babies.
Yeah, God's wisdom, our pets, a good night's sleep. Be thankful when the rare time you get a good night's sleep. Medication,
have that sleep. That
veterans.
really helps you in the morning.
Well, it does, and you put all that in perspective in the book, and the poems are very easy to read. They will stick with you for a long time. They will help put your life in perspective and give you a different perspective on life. It's Let Us Give Thanks by Robert Perkins, who's been our guest on the program. What's it been like doing this and getting feedback and people that are touched by your thoughts? It has to be a feeling that you get from this that is very meaningful.
Yes, it is. It makes you feel good that the people are, like you said, touched by the words, and that they can pass it on to other people, and that they can be words can be used.
Yeah, and it's something that helps all of us get through sometimes difficult situations in life. We're looking for this, and life comes at us.
That's why I write.
Well, and that's why people read and respond as they do to your writing, because life comes at us at 1,000 miles an hour sometimes, and we need to just sort of slow it down. And gratitude is probably something at the bottom of our list as we're putting through all the things we want to express during the course of the day. It will give you a different outlook on life, a different appreciation for life. The book is Let Us Give Thanks by our guest on the program, Robert Perkins. You'll find the book at Amazon. You'll find it at bookventure.com in their bookstore, and you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Robert, it is always fun, always a pleasure to have you with us. Look forward to having you back to talk about the love story you're writing. Would love to read it and be able to talk about that. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program today.
Well, thank you for having me.
It is always a pleasure. Robert Perkins, our guest. The book is Let Us Give Thanks. Book available at bookventure.com. You can link on directly and get information on Robert and his book by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You're listening to This Week in America, and we're back right after these messages.